Good evening, friends and family, and thank you for coming to another night with Repair, Restore, and Grow Black Businesses podcast, Behind Black Business. And tonight we have another very, very special guest, uh, Rashid Nuri. And Rashid, I want to thank you so much for coming with us tonight. Rashid has some very important information that we need to know. And so thank you again for coming.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be with you, Miss Denise.
Absolutely. So, family, as you know, we come every Wednesday bringing you a one black business, a wonderful person in our community that is doing something to make something positive happen. Repair, Restore, and Grow Black Communities is a nonprofit organization. We're a group of people who have come together to try and make a difference in our community. There's so much negative conversation about what's going on in our community, and there's not enough focus on what people are doing out here. And that's the purpose of our podcast, is to bring our businesses to you, because as we know, our black businesses are more likely to hire black people, provide entrepreneurial opportunities for other inspiring black entrepreneurs. Um, they're more likely to donate to our causes. They use other black people for their services, and they certainly serve as role models for our children. And we have many businesses in our community who give nothing back. And that's why a lot of our communities are in the condition that they're in, because all of those resources that we're pouring into businesses in our community are not coming back to us. And so it's very important that we support Black owned businesses. That's how we circulate the dollar. And as you know, we are great proponents of our Black owned bookstores. There was a time in history when it was against the law for Black people to learn how to read. And so reading is power, reading is knowledge, and it is through reading that we were able to uplift ourselves and are going to be able to continue to progress as people in this country and around the world. And our Black bookstores have our history. We're fighting laws to teach Black history in our schools to our children. But all of the information that we need are in our Black bookstores that we have out here. So we have to support them. Every month we a Black bookstore on our website. And so this month it is the Underground Bookstore, located at 1727 East 87th Street in the Avalon Park area here in Chicago. We once had 22 Black owned bookstores. We were down to 2, and now we have 9. So they are flourishing, and we have young people who are opening up bookstores, and young people who are authoring books. And so we have to support them. And one of the things that we do is we have a book giveaway. We sponsor this giveaway. Whoever the bookstore of the month is, we give them an opportunity to select the book. We purchase that book, and one of our lucky subscribers wins that book. And so the book of the month that was selected by the Underground Bookstore is by Robert Greene, and it's a 4-pack series. Now, our Robert Greene is known for writing books on strategy, power, and seduction. He's also known for writing books that tells us about what these corporations are doing and how they operate. And as we know, many of these corporations, both in our country and outside of our country, are having a great influence on our government right now. And so we need to know about these people and who they are. In this four-pack series is the 48 Laws of Power, Art of Seduction, Concise Laws of Human Nature, Concise Laws of Mastery. And the winner for this month is Christopher Scott. Christopher, you are our lucky winner. Congratulations to you. Thank you for subscribing to Repair, Restore, and Grow Black Communities. And we will be contacting you and we will send you this book free of charge. This is a book that was selected by Brother Yoel at the Underground Bookstore. And if there is a book that you are looking for that you cannot find, that may be out of print, the Underground Bookstore at undergroundbookstore.com in Chicago, Illinois, that's who you need to contact because he has a very interesting set of literature in that store. He's been servicing the community for almost 30 years. So he's one of the two Black bookstores that survived the downslaught of our bookstores here in Chicago. Lastly, I want to mention Southside Community Federal Credit Union, which is a Black-owned financial institution here in Chicago that we want to support. In order for a bank to thrive, we have to have accounts. So we need you to open up an account. That's how a bank creates dollars. So we ask you to support the Southside Community Federal Credit Union. They're located at Wentworth and Garfield. They have mortgage loans, they have personal loans, they have car loans, they give financial literacy classes, and they opened up just because many Black people were not able to get banks as loans at some of our larger banks where many of us have our dollars. So we want to support the Southside Community Federal Credit Union. And lastly, addressing our public policy division, we're asking you to go to Save Black Bookstores in Chicago at change.org and sign our petition requesting that our local libraries and our local schools here in Chicago give contracts to our Black-owned bookstores. And with the dollars that we raise, we ask you give donations. We ask that you shop at our online store. And that enables us to bring you this podcast, do these book giveaways, and do a lot of the work that we get involved in terms of helping businesses get websites and fighting to keep some of our businesses open. So we ask that you continue to support our efforts. So those are our announcements for tonight. I will announce the winner of the book again at the end of the show. So let's get into our conversation with Brother Rashid Nuri. Uh, Rashid, as I mentioned to you when I called, the guest that we had on our show last week, Anthony and Karima, who are the owners of the Magnolia Crescent Winery. They have over 21 different wines, and they gave a lot of credit to your mentoring and your support that enabled two people that had very little knowledge about planting, farming, yet alone starting an orchard. But it was your support that enabled them to do what they did. And so I just had to have you as a sequel to them.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Um, I like hearing you promote the bookstores because those who read lead, those who don't won't. And we need to, Black people need to get as much knowledge as we can so that we can recreate and build a community that will enable us to survive long into the future. Karima and Anthony are very nice young people. And they had me come out there and walk them around, give my suggestions uh,
Okay.
on how they could begin to do what they're doing. And they're
Mm-hmm.
both very enthusiastic and energetic, as your guest I'm sure heard uh,
Mm-hmm.
last week. And for me, to have an opportunity to speak to young people in that way is just a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. And it's a blessing to have someone to speak to, to have elders in our community that can pass that information on, and then for them to be willing to, accept it
And
and do
listen,
something with
yes,
it.
that's right. That's exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So first of all, I want you to tell, our family, our audience, so we consider our audience our family, um, about who you are.
Mm.
I mean, when I heard what you were doing, I wondered, maybe he originally came from a farm, and this information was passed on to him, and that's how he got involved. So tell us a little bit about you, and how you got started on this journey.
Oh man, yeah. Well, it's been a while. My lifetimes from conception spans the post independence period. India got its independence in 1947, and that's when I was conceived. So
Mhm.
I've been able to see the world unfold and hopefully have made a constructive contribution to the future through agriculture. I'm a city boy. I was born in Boston, went to 14 schools before I graduated high school in San Diego. My mother's from New England. My father's a Jamaican from New York. And I was interested in health and nutrition. And one day, while sitting in the library, God spoke to me and told me to learn everything about food from the seed to the table and to do it experientially. And by experience, we actually go out there and do the work. So I finished up my undergrad degree was actually in government, political science. My
Mhm.
interest was how you build countries. Okay? And fortunately, I took math and science every year. So I was also qualified to go to medical school and was able to go to graduate school and get a degree in plant and soil science, agriculture, and that completed my academic work. Leaving the university, I had to unlearn everything they taught me because I was interested in organic agriculture, natural agriculture, growing things that are healthful, not with all the poisons that the ag industry in this country puts on all of us in just hideous ways. And did that, and then began my work. So I had what I call my own burning bush experience,
Uh-huh.
and that's when God spoke. He said, learn everything from seed to the table and to do it experientially. And that's what I did.
Okay. Well, you honed on something that was very fundamental, but what's also interesting is you were studying about how we build countries.
Hmm.
In
Yes,
just a
ma'am.
in a I guess I'm sure that's a big topic,
It was
but
huge.
just fundamentally, what's involved in building a country. And I think it's something that our people should be cognizant of and thinking about, so
Well,
so they can understand, exactly where we are in the scheme of things. So
well,
what are some of the fundamental things that have to be there as far as building a country?
you're going to build a nation, you have to feed, clothe, and shelter your people.
Hmm.
Those are the basics. So you start with your family. You want to feed, clothe, and shelter your family, your community. And then it grows from there. You develop the various tribes that we have around the world
Okay.
that have to take care of themselves, have to be self-dependent, have to protect themselves, have to educate themselves. But where it begins, food, clothing, and shelter are the basic elements that human beings need in order to survive. All right, everything else comes from there. So
Okay.
I chose, food, and I found in my work that everything that you can think of is connected to food production, with its health, education, uh, civility, um, how you organize, taking care of. If you're going to have one of the things that I learned long ago, if someone is going to teach my children, someone's got to feed the person that's teaching my children. Okay. If
Okay.
if there's somebody in our community who's providing health care, somebody has to produce the food to feed the healthcare worker, doctor, whatever name you want to put on it. So it extends in that direction. So, and everything begins with and ends with the soil. All life begins with the soil, ends with the soil. So we need to. Food is the fundamental thing that I got involved with at a young age, and I've been doing this for well over 50 years now.
Wow. I mentioned to you when we first talked about the fact that we have a lot of community gardening going on here in Chicago. And I actually am part of a community garden, and I have a small, plot there. And I'm busy. I'm very busy, and I probably didn't work on it give it as the attention that I should have. But somehow, no matter how tired I was, when I got over there and I started working in the soil,
You revive.
um, something happened.
You get
I'm
revived.
not I'm not tired anymore. And no matter how much weeds I see, I have to pull up, or maybe some transplanting or whatever, clearing out. Um, is something very healing about working
Well, it
the soil.
if you meet somebody in the community who's kind of floating, they're not well grounded. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Well, put your hands in the soil, put your feet in the soil, and you will be
Mm-hmm.
grounded. So that rejuvenation that you receive from working in your plot makes perfect sense. It's natural. That is how you connect with nature, creation, is through that soil.
Now, what's important is how you are beginning to apply so many things to food, you know, and so much does evolve around food. I mean, we have an issue with food here in in this country. I think we eat too much, and we eat too much of the wrong foods, and just the whole 9 yards. But it so much does evolve around food. Um,
Think about it. Every holiday that you have in this country is
uh-huh,
centered around food.
that's right.
We just did
Certain
things.
certain certain foods like the turkeys, they're in trouble
Yes,
around Thanksgiving, right?
but you have Thanksgiving, you have Christmas dinners, you have New Year's where you're eating food. In a lot of black communities eating black things, traditional black food. Easter has food. The 4th of July has food. Memorial Day, you got a picnic. I mean, every single holiday this country has, food is a central element of it.
And you almost can't even call a gathering without having some food.
That's
People are
exactly
like,
right.
if you have any kind of gatherings, a meeting or what have you. um, we even talked about the some of the misfortune, the unfortunate side of drinking, when we had the discussion with Karima and Anthony, and she talked about how in corporate America, people get into drinking alcohol, and for some people, become overindulgent, and so becomes a problem. Um,
Well, that I don't drink, so that takes that out of my equation. So it
yeah.
makes that easy. But if you stop and think, some of the most intimate occasions that we have in this country is around the food. Okay,
Hmm.
that becomes so important. I found as the children come out into the garden, there's so many lessons they're able to learn. But that is a place where all most politics are not displayed. Okay, politics, I'm talking about this electoral process and all the stuff that goes on. It's not there. You don't have Republicans arguing with Democrats, arguing with independents. You're talking about the food, how to grow the food, how to prepare the food, how to present the food. It's about how you're going to nourish yourself, where that food comes from. It's so important to know who grows your food, the quality of your food, and where your food comes from. And you can't do that with big ag. All the stores that you have, there's corporate stores that you have in Chicago, you don't know who grew that food. You don't know where it came from. It's just there and you got to take it. It all looks exactly the same. That's why I call it it's steroid food. I mean, it all
Mm-hmm.
looks exactly the same. There's no blemishes on it, and for the most part, those vegetables that you get don't taste very good.
Yeah.
They're bland. People need to. I suggest to folks buy your if you're going to the grocery store, you want to buy the food around the periphery of the store. You know, you're going to have regardless of what your diet regimen is, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
find the best quality food around the store. You're going where your fruits and vegetables are, the dairy products, the meat, the fish, the bakery. That's always around the walls. And in the middle, you
Sure.
have all that processed food, which is terrible stuff. And I think it's important when you do pick up that processed food, read the labels.
Absolutely.
If the food has more than 5 ingredients, it's not food. It's a chemistry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you can't pronounce what's in that can, right? If you don't know what the words mean, if it has more than 5 ingredients, it's not food. And if you can't pronounce what's in there, you got the mono blah da 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 that's in that food. I personally won't touch it. I'm blessed. I have 7 children. I raised 6 of my children as a single parent, and they didn't have any canned foods when they were coming up. That may be why they're doing as good as they do now. I'm so pleased.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter, she told us at one point she didn't understand how come we couldn't go get food like everybody else does. And they'd have to go out in the garden. That's where they got the broccoli
Mm-hmm.
and green
So
beans.
do they have an appreciation for that today?
I think so because they're all fundamentally healthy. They didn't
Sure.
at that time, and they show, by God's grace, they show respect to me for the work that I have done over the
Okay.
years, and they're healthy people. They're doing
But
good.
you're right about the taste of the food because I used to go to the South with my grandparents, my great grandparents. All their siblings had farms, and tomatoes. I mean, we ate tomatoes like you would eat a peach off a tree because of the way they tasted. You know,
Mhm.
I think they don't. If our people, especially our young people, had a comparison,
Yeah,
to show the difference between what a really fresh tomato tastes and what the
yeah.
bland, ones that you're talking about taste like in the supermarkets.
Yes, ma'am. The proof is in the tasting.
Hmm.
Um, the that food that's in the grocery store, even in the I said eat around the periphery of the store. That includes the vegetables. Those are better than the canned stuff. Let me be clear about that. But the best
Hmm.
food is the one you're going to grow yourself. I think it's important to know who grows your food, the quality of your food, and where your food comes from. And the
Hmm.
best food is going to come out of the land that you're working. And particularly if you learn that what I tell people, I don't grow food. I didn't grow food. I built soil. Right? I fed the soil and let God grow the food. Okay. And if you feed that soil, let me back up one more step. The name of the organization that I found was Truly Living Well Center for Natural Urban Agriculture. And for
Hmm.
me, I wanted to emulate as closely as possible the processes that I see in nature. If I don't see it and can't recognize it in the natural environment, then I'm not going to do it. Most of the agriculture that we see today, it's really just you get the best indication of the quality of your soil is the number of earthworms that you're going to find in it. If you don't see
Hmm.
any earthworms in your soil, there's a problem. You go out to any of these big farms, there's no life, no earthworm, no fungi, no roly-polies, nothing, because all they do is use the soil as a receptacle for the roots of the plant. Okay.
Okay.
They know more than God does. And so they'll add all those chemicals. The chemicals are going to kill all the life in the soil, but they get enough so that they can grow the plants. There was a man, and check this name out. His name was Just Us von Liebig. Just Us lying big to the people. This is the man's name. He's a German,
Okay.
and he's the one that discovered vitamins, vital amino acids, and broke down the agricultural process that the principle, the law of the minimum, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And there's only three elements that they're going to put in that soil to grow this food, whereas God gives us there's probably 52 elements out there in that garden, um, in that soil, if the soil is healthy to grow those food, and we get all those nutrients, micronutrients. It's the working how the fungi and the bacteria work together to create a web which produces the quality food. And it's all those elements that make the difference in the taste between that tomato you got on the farm in the country and that tomato you get at the grocery store. Right? Because they don't, the one in the grocery store, they're not getting all the benefits of a high quality soil to grow their food.
Now,
That
see,
makes
that's interesting. I had some questions for you around that, because as you grow food, one of the things, like here in Chicago, I live near the lakefront, and if you go down, you may not have to go down too many feet, and there's sand down there, because a lot of this land is sitting, on
yes,
top of the
ma'am.
sand, on top of the lake. And how I know the first time I tried to grow something, the plants, I think I grew some broccoli and some greens, and they looked so nice. And then all of a sudden, I came out there one day, and there was some white stuff all over it.
Yeah,
And I said, somebody told me it's too much acid in the soil. So how do you? That's one of the first things I guess you need to think about. How do you treat that soil? You know.
that that is the first thing you have to think about. Okay, and my mantra for many years has been compost, compost, compost. You need to take all the dead living all the living materials that have died, compost it so it turns back into soil. You know, the biblical term, ashes, ashes, and dust to dust.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that's alive is going to go back to the soil at some point, and that's what you use to grow your food. So that fungus that you got on your broccoli is because the soil wasn't strong. Too many people approach that garden; they're trying to grow food. Okay, and that's
Mm-hmm.
where they run into a problem because they just want to grow the food. They're not paying any attention to the soil. All life, all wealth, all health begins and ends with the soil. And that's where the focus must be, is on the soil, not on the food. God will grow the food. There's no question about that. I look out down. We're lucky. I'm down here in Atlanta. And we're really lucky. Atlanta's the greenest city in America by virtue of trees and open space. And you just
Mm-hmm.
look out there and you see all these beautiful hardwood trees in particular, that have been around for hundreds of years. And the principle of those trees grow, they drop their leaves, the leaves break down, the life that's in the soil digests that, and it just keeps the wheel of life, the wheel of health. And that's what we try to emulate. That's why I called my organization the Truly Living Well Center for Natural Urban Agriculture, not that chemical agriculture that you're going to find in all those big. You go south of Chicago for a little, out west of Chicago, and see all them big farms that they have up there, and they just
Mm-hmm.
putting chemicals out there, keeping the chemical industry in running.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, here's something people don't know. After the Second World War, all those munitions manufacturers that were making that gunpowder didn't know what they could do with how they going to keep making business. So what they did is they start putting the essence of it is they put gunpowder out in the fields. Okay. And that became a nitrogen source. That ammonium became a nitrogen source to grow. In your state, Illinois, corn is huge, and the
Yes.
soybeans. Those are the
Yes.
things that you see out there. And that's what they use gunpowder to grow that food. What's that going to do? What kind of food is that going to be?
Wow. And so that ultimately has, an impact on our health. I mean, just as bad as the processed food. We get the food out of the can, or then if you get food that you have to be concerned about the soil that it's grown in.
You sure do. Well, if you stop and think, look at the dis-ease that has risen in the world over these last 50, 75 years. You got folks are fat. Americans are fat. Okay,
Hmm.
obese. This is
Yes.
coming from food that is not good. It's not good for us. Okay, we eating all that computerized food. All the fast foods that you find around. Now they want to sell you a product that impossible, I don't know, impossible something, has 50 11 different ingredients in it, and they're giving it to you because you'll think it's meat. But all them chemicals that goes into that, all that artificial ingredients that's going in it to give you something that is not real in the first place, it's going to kill you. The diabetes, heart attacks, all these diseases have come up, and if you, just as your plants that you planted that got sick, humans get sick from this for
Mm-hmm.
the same reason that plant got sick. It did its source of what's the word I want? Nutrition was poor. Okay, so those plants didn't succeed, and that's the same problem. Excuse me, that's the same problem that people have. Am,
So I
am I
guess
making sense?
so yeah, and I'm assuming the problem with obesity is you're eating foods and your body is not getting the nutrition
That's
that it
correct.
needs from the food that you're eating. So you're continuing to eat, and eat, and your body is not getting the nutrition that it needs.
That's correct.
And
That's
that's why
correct.
you're continuing to eat because your body is not satisfied.
Exactly right.
Wow. That is really interesting. You know, when I think about our people, I talked about my grandparents, my great grandparents, they had farms in the South. And
Are those farms still in your family?
no,
Why?
and that's where I was going.
Mhm.
Their children, seem to have, as they got older and their parents passed away, they seem to have moved as far away from that as they could.
Exactly right. Because some of it is vestiges of slavery in terms of our mentality. But my father was an educator in New York. He had nice suits, nice car, lived in a condominiums is a piece of the sky that you're living in because you don't really have any soil there. And he had credit cards. He looked like he was living well. Then you contrast it with Uncle Bubba down there in the country who only wears overalls and got dirty boots, but he got a tractor out there that costs him a couple $100,000. He has to borrow $500,000 every year to make that crop. Okay, so who really has the wealth? My father with all his mortgages and debt payment, or Uncle Bubba down there who's able to no education, able to raise the money to send his children to school. Now, what
Hmm.
happens though is the consequence of that. Folk got up here into these cities for the whole migration process that's taken place since Henry Ford started bringing people from the South to work in those car factories up there in Detroit, and they gotten away from the soil. Okay, got out of the systems, the oppressive systems of agriculture that have been imposed upon Black people. We built this country. This country's wealth was built on our backs. We were the wealth in the 100 years ago. We would literally were the wealth. Well, I guess
Hmm.
it's more than 100 years ago now. And you could take us, mortgage a Black person, and borrow money to go do whatever it is you want to do. So the history of America is built on the systems of servitude that have enriched a small portion of this country. All right. And as the South became and agriculture became more industrialized, you didn't need people out there because they were up here in these factories, okay,
Hmm.
building stuff. And we got away from the land. So all the folk in the city who had a connection, like your family, to a farm down there, they didn't want it. They would
No.
sell that farm instead of understanding where that wealth was. 1910, we had arguably 15 to 18 million acres of land that Black people own. Today, it's less than 2 million acres. We sold that land. We lost that land. White folks stole it from us. The
Hmm.
work I did, I ran the Nation of Islam's farms back in the
Hmm.
mid 70s. We had over 13,000 acres of land. And when Mr. Muhammad died, his children ended up going to probate court and had to sell the land. 13,000 acres of land we had. Think about that. It's contrasted with that 40 acres and a mule paradigm.
Hmm.
13,000 acres. And they had to sell that to satisfy their tax bills and in their own pockets instead of keeping that land. There's a right. We're the farm I lived on over in Turl County, Georgia. That was 4,200 acres, which is right next to the 6,000 acres that Shirley Sherrod had. The new and her husband Charles. He just died recently. They had 6,000. We had 4. That was 10,000 acres right there in that neighborhood, and the white folks hated it. Okay,
Mm.
did everything they could to get that land back. I was able to keep it from being stolen. So the man who ended up with that land had to pay for it instead of stealing it like he wanted to do. And the Sherrods ended up getting a large piece of money. So they're able to buy another farm over in Dougherty County. Yeah, I said, yeah, Albany, Georgia. So you see these stories all over the South.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
and that was the problem that we had. We didn't appreciate and understand the significance of owning land,
That's
producing
right.
from the land, and doing for self, not
That's
looking
right.
for somebody else to do it for us.
Because that's where your wealth is.
That's it.
It's in the land, the most natural resource of where we come from, where everything comes from, owning
That's
the land.
that's right.
And like you said, being able to do for yourself, that's where your wealth is. That was a good analogy that you made about people coming up here and getting mortgages and owning, because I look at, like my grandparents, migrated here from the South, and
Where
they
what
bought a
state?
home.
Mhm.
They paid for it. But at the end of the day, um, they had a house, and that was it. But they had to work. They had to work and they had to work. And then what happened, this same phenomena actually started to continue, because once many of those people, like in my grandparents' generation, came here to Chicago and they bought their homes and they paid for them, many of their children either lost them or sold their houses. You know, it happened again after they came here to the north,
Well, see,
and now we're dealing with gentrification, you know.
if you go back and read the history, any of our black leaders who talked about doing for self, um, this government, this system went after them. I mean, you go back, Marcus Garvey, Father Divine, Daddy Grace, Elijah Muhammad, all these brothers are saying do for self, okay, and trying to build an organization. And they got uh, chopped down,
Mm-hmm.
destroyed, so that we can keep us in servitude. So that's how this system has worked. Um, and these people, these white folks think many generations ahead. So this is why we listen to you teach, talking about how important these black bookstores are, and the need
Mm-hmm.
to support these black stores, because knowledge is power. If you
Mm-hmm.
don't understand the history where you've been, how you going to know where you're going? All right.
That's right.
So we got to get that knowledge and then build upon that and not repeat the mistakes. Because if you don't learn from the mistakes that were made, you're just going to keep on repeating them, and we're not going to get anywhere. Fortunately, there's enough of us around who have been doing good work, so there are some progress in a lot of ways. I'm very cynical about it. I see a lot of ways in which the black community is going backwards. I told you I worked in the poverty program back in the 60s, and Lyndon Johnson, his war on poverty, that was so great. But here's what happened. I hope I didn't repeat this already. But you had all those that war on poverty created a black middle class. You gave people jobs, they got some money, they were able to buy a house, they got out of the ghettos, and now
Mm-hmm.
who's moving back into the city where the ghettos used to be? White folks coming back and getting their land, and they plan this ahead. They say, "Oh, let's
Mm-hmm.
get these folks, let's get them out of the cities so we can get our cities back." They let all of what happened coming out of the 60s and 70s. You had all these major black cities had black mayors, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and okay, but the tax base was gone.
Mm.
It could not do what was necessary to build those communities and make them strong. And so now they come back. I look here in Atlanta. As I said, it's the greenest city in America. Where you should see all the construction and buildings going on. These people are coming back into the city, displacing all these black folk. They're moving out to the counties out. They have to get in a traffic jam for an hour to come into the city to do the same work they had done before, paying mortgages instead of having this prime property, which is right here in town. It's take a deep breath because it gets me upset.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And it seems like, well, not it seems like, but we look at the immigrant population that is coming into the country, that is being welcomed, into the country, and they're giving, uh, in appearance, they're giving more resources. Uh, and then I know they got a country that they're coming from. So maybe you can talk about
Oh
this.
yeah, I can address that. They help themselves. See, they
Mm-hmm.
work together. Yeah, whether it's the Ethiopians with the garages, or you look at it. The Koreans own the hair beauty
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
supply shops, and how they get they don't go to the banks to get that money. That money comes from the community, from their community. They work
Mm-hmm.
together to build these things, and they're going to exclude us. I heard a story just in the last couple of days. Um, Black person tried to get some help. He said, "No, I can't do that for you. I got to help my kin over here." All right.
Absolutely.
So that unity in those communities is what makes them strong, and that's what Black people must do if we're going to succeed and get ourselves out of the condition that so many of us find ourselves. And all the crime, black on black crime that we commit, instead of helping one another, we're killing one another. Okay, we're
Mm-hmm.
giving each other all these drugs. Okay, and all the negative things that happen in the Black community, instead of us working together to try to improve ourselves as the other communities do. As I travel, I've worked in 37 countries around the world. My work in
Okay.
agriculture has always taken me to the backwoods, to the real rural areas to see. And I've worked in Asia, Africa, Europe, and nowhere did I go. How far from the big cities, I could always get a Chinese meal.
Hmm.
Chinese are
They are
everywhere.
everywhere.
Okay,
Yes, they are.
so the intelligence network that they're able to develop, the money networks, the underground banking. I could go to a rural area in any country over in Africa
Mm-hmm.
and get a piece of paper, give that man some money right there, get a piece of paper with the plastic wax seal on it, take it over to Asia and get the cash. Okay, because they have an underground banking system, which is very, very strong. I've seen it. I've seen it. Okay. And we have not developed that level of consciousness about the work that we do and what we need to do to build our community and feed, clothe, and shelter our people. Now, this
Well,
progress.
you hear me talk about, supporting our, we had several other black banks here in Chicago, which,
Right.
we don't have anymore, but we do have this credit union and, maybe another institution, but trying to get our people to support them.
Now we're gonna go give our money
we
to the
don't
right.
see we don't see the direct correlation between supporting these institutions and how they can improve our lives, how they can be supportive to us, just
Exactly.
like our businesses.
That's exactly right.
And so, when we talk about have these conversations, it's like, what are we going to do? But reason why what you're doing is so important is you're going back to the very base, the land,
Fundamentals. That's right.
going back to the land, going
I'm
back to
glad
the
you
land
see.
for healing, going back to the land for your nutrition that you need, and your resources that you need, and your means of being able to sustain yourself.
Well, thank you, sister. I'm glad you understand that, and I take your comments as a tremendously great compliment. Thank you very much. And that is true. That has been my life. That's what I do. And one of however I can be. George Washington Carver said, uh, "Well, isn't that terrible? I just lost it in my head. It's
Right.
simply service that measures success." And you look at my website. text messages at the bottom, that's what it says. It's simply quote him. It's simply service emails. It's simply service that measures success. And that's been my credo. How can I help you? What can I do to
Hmm.
assist? Okay? And that's a credo for my life. And I thank God that I've been able to live that. It's not just words. I do it.
So who calls you? Who do you get calls from, contact from?
Oh, it's a wide spectrum. A lot of time now, these young people that we have raised, they think they know everything. And I can't get mad at them because when I was young, I thought I knew it all. You couldn't tell me
Sure.
nothing. This is why in the beginning of my book, I wrote it for my grandchildren, okay? Because they may come up with the questions that they may eventually have. Maybe some of the answers will be in my book because the quote Luther Vandross, I would love to dance with my father again.
Hmm.
Okay? I mean, there's
That's
so
a
many things
beautiful song.
yeah. I mean, there's so many things I can think of now that I didn't ask him that I would like to know now, but I didn't. So I wrote this book to put it out there. Now, whether they read it or not, that's on them.
Can
I've
you
done,
show us the book? Can you show us the book?
yeah, here it is
Okay, what's the name of your book?
called Growing Out Loud. Growing Out
Okay.
Loud. It's the Journal of a Food Revolutionary. Oops, let me get my head out of there. Can you see it?
Okay. Yes, I see it. I see
Mm-hmm.
it.
Um,
Okay.
so that's how I began that book. This is for them. And I think about my people who preceded me, my ancestors, the
Hmm.
contributions they made, the struggles that they had to endure. So I have a responsibility to build upon that. It's funny. I found that the people who have dropped their bodies have a greater impact on my life when they're not here than they did when they were alive. You know,
Sure.
so the ancestors are there and they're watching us.
Hmm.
They're watching us. One of the questions I often ask, sister, when I'm giving a talk, is what is the opposite of death? I'm asking you.
Life.
That's what most people say.
What most
I
people say.
yeah, I disagree with that. I think it's birth. We come
Mm.
in and we go out. You
Okay.
got infinity on both sides because the energy doesn't leave the universe. That life, that vital force, that vital energy in our bodies, it stays in the universe.
Hmm.
So that
Hmm.
means we have a very short period of time between when we came in here and when we leave to make a contribution, to make our world, this planet, a better place. And that's a contribution to the whole universe. And that's the way I think. That's the
And
way
see,
I.
that's a fundamental level of understanding that I think is really important to understand, how everything is interconnected. I know when my daughter first did a project on water, and I learned that, all of the water that we use, it never goes away. It goes through a transition process and it comes right back. We're using the same water the dinosaurs use,
That's right.
it
That's
none of
exactly
it
right.
ever goes away, and it has an impact on your mind and the way you think, because then you can begin to understand, as you say, it never goes away,
Mm-mm,
you know
mm-mm.
and those
I-
people in your life. And I feel that way about my
oh yeah.
grandparents and many of my
Oh, yeah.
ancestors. They're still here because they're a part of who I am.
And I pray that when they see what I'm doing, it makes them smile every now and
Absolutely.
then. And that's the only thing I would like to know that I made a contribution. And it's beautiful now at this stage of my life. It's a different stage. I'm not running around and I'm really still answering your question that you had asked just a couple of minutes ago. Uh, I like people that would say Rashid made a contribution. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the beautiful thing is, over these last 4 years, people have been telling me that. So
Mm-hmm.
that's great. It gives me a great deal of satisfaction. You see old people sitting on the porch, you think they may be mindless, but they're not. they're going back to their memory files, and
Mm-hmm.
reliving those events, going deeper into them than they had from before. And I'm having that at this age. This is my 75th year, and at this age, I'm going through that process. So your question was, when people call me, what I got to say? It depends. I don't go out there trying to say you need to understand and you need to. No, no, no. I ain't going to
Mm-hmm.
shoot on nobody. Okay. But if someone asks me for some assistance and I can help them, and the proof of what I'm saying is the fact that you had Anthony and Karima on your show last week and they told you that was
Absolutely.
that makes me feel so good. All right. Because I'm not the work that I have been involved in, the things that I do, I have not done them to be seen. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Too many folks get out here, they do things, and then looking back over, oh, you watching me? Can you see what I'm doing? No, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's totally irrelevant. It makes what you're doing false. You do. There's Adam Smith who wrote the Wealth of Nations back in 1760. He was an Englishman. He had a phrase that I got out of his book. He says, "Don't try to do good. Let good be a byproduct of selfishness." Now, you first hear that, you say, "Whoa, what does that mean?" I see that. You see how your brow got all scrolls up there trying to figure out what I'm talking about. Okay? But that has always been very profound to me. You don't do things, don't try to do good. You just do it you don't want to do it to be seen. You do it because
Mm-hmm.
that's what you're supposed to do.
Absolutely.
You're
Just
supposed,
just just be,
there
right?
it is. And not worry, oh, do I look good doing this? And how's this going? No, 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 no. You got to have your own personal integrity and approach whatever you're doing with that integrity, the spiritual understandings, the grounding that you have. You bring it to the work, and it's not to be seen; it's to be done. Okay, and then that's my attitude. George Washington Carver had ample, who was the brother who came to Tuskegee in 1895 to help Booker T. Washington build that school. He saved Southern Africa. He saved agriculture in the Southern United States. Henry Ford wanted him to come to Chicago. They made so many. He taught crop rotation, saved because the crops were playing out. The soil was worn out from just growing cotton. He introduced a soil rotation. He had
Yeah.
soybeans,
Yes, he did.
sweet potatoes, and along with the cotton and corn, all that was in that mix. But he never wanted to leave Tuskegee because he wasn't
Mm.
concerned. I mean, this brother would get up every day and go out and walk in the woods and commune with nature. What is commune with nature? You're listening to God. Let nature, let God talk to you. And he brought that back work. And he hit. And here's something that people don't know about George Washington Carver. There are only 4 recordings of his voice.
Mm.
Okay. He had a little itty bitty tiny voice like a 5 or 6-year-old because he was castrated. That's the reason he was able to go to the schools with the white women, the white
Mm-hmm.
people, because he was no threat to them in that
Mm.
way. And he just did his work in Tuskegee. Got to 1895, and I think he was 1943 when he dropped his body over there and did that where he introduced extension work. He saved the South. He literally saved the South. Great man, great man. And the teamwork that he and Booker T. Washington had was wonderful. Booker T. was the one that went out there. He was on the Booker T. Went to the White House, sit with Teddy Roosevelt, and is able to bring the resources back to Tuskegee, Alabama, that they didn't have. And Carver did the work. Booker T. Washington was the politician. He was out knocking on the doors, raising money. And if you read his books, this is hence why your bookstore. Go read
That's
up to
right.
David.
That's right. You're getting a
And
history lesson.
yeah,
You're
Booker
getting a
T. was
history lesson.
he explained all that they did. So these were great men. They made tremendous sacrifices in order to help us to get us where we were. First time I went to the library at Tuskegee, it blew my mind.
Mm.
Okay, the catalogs at that time, this is a long time ago, were organized with how to do this, how to do that. It was all practical stuff, how to get things done. And I thought that was very beautiful. And they still have those collections over there. I'm sure they're on a new system now in that library.
Wow.
But back then, what am I talking about? Back in the early 70s, that's when I went there, and they had them, still had them wood catalogs, wood cabinets with the drawers where you pull the books out there, and that's what,
Mhm.
how to do all these different things. So they were teaching people very practical skills coming out of that
Very
institute.
practical.
But
You
I just went
know,
off.
we
Hmm.
when I talked to you earlier, you had expressed to me how the reason why also this is so important is that our cities or our land is becoming more urbanized, which was something I hadn't really noticed myself. But you talked about the urban areas are increasing, and that is another reason why people need to be growing
There
locally.
they are. It's close.
Can you
It
speak to
and
that?
I have, I do a lot. By God's grace, I can afford to shop at Whole Foods. Whole Foods is expensive. Okay,
Yes, they are. We call them whole paycheck.
that's they are. They take a whole. But I'm single. My children are all grown, so I'm
Hmm.
grateful I can go. And what I like about Whole Foods is that most of the stuff they have in there meets the positive criteria that I've said. It's good quality stuff, simple
Hmm.
ingredients. It's just even the stuff that's in the middle. It's simple. It doesn't have all them chemicals that you're going to find these in the store.
Hmm.
Okay. I just lost my point. Let me see where I was going with that.
Was talking about the cities becoming or areas becoming more urbanized.
Yeah.
And so
So
it's
yes, Whole Foods can here in Atlanta. Whole Foods considers local food that they're getting all the way up in Virginia, the Carolinas, Tennessee, over to Texas. They got a huge area that they consider local food. Okay,
hmm.
but I'm interested. I want to see us have local food right here. One of the organizations that I'm associated with, we had when I started Truly Living Well, you had difficulty finding a farmer's market on any day of the week.
Hmm.
Now they're everywhere. I'm part of an organization called Community Farmers Markets. And I just kind of sit there. There's some young people who are running it, and they're doing a good job. But they got like 8 markets around town. They have food at the train stations. Okay, so people
Hmm.
could get some quality food, and I think that's the most important thing. And that food that sells at the local farmers market is not coming from Virginia or Texas. It's coming
Hmm.
from, I don't know, within 50 miles of here, 100 miles of here. That's local food. And here in Atlanta, we're very fortunate there's enough space that we can grow all of the fruits and vegetables you need to feed everybody. Now, not meat and grain. You need that has to be out in the countryside so the animals can run. You have the space to
Hmm.
grow grain. But fruits and vegetables, there's enough land right here in the 5 counties to feed all the people. Because here, look at the demographics. 80% of the Americans live in urban areas, mostly around on the coast, East Coast and the West Coast. You look at the maps, okay? Most of the population is on the East Coast, the West Coast, and around the lakes, okay? All you folk up there in the Midwest of this country. The middle of and interestingly enough, the political maps, all blue along the coast and along around the lakes, and all red in the middle. For whatever that means, because there's really not that much difference between the Democrats and Republicans.
Hmm.
Looking at it from overseas. All right. They all
Okay.
support the military on got 1,000 military installations around the world. So the difference is, I think I can say it on there's not a gnat's ass difference between the Democrats and Republicans.
Hmm.
It's still
Hmm.
all about supporting those military bases we have all over the world, getting the world's resources and bringing it back to this country so the rich people who run this country can continue to stay rich. Okay, and that's the
Absolutely.
problem. It's a huge problem, but we don't see it because they feed us all this garbage on the televisions and the movie theaters. Not going to let you see the
But
truth.
we have to look at the obvious, continued, oppression of Black people, you
Yeah,
know, in this country and abroad. You
all over
know
the world.
that I mean, that's an obvious. It's been a constant.
Well,
And as you were talking about the foods again, like in Chicago here, we have food deserts. They call
see,
them food. They call them food deserts because
don't
we
use
don't and we don't have black-owned grocery stores.
you don't. I really dislike that term, food deserts,
Mm-hmm.
because as soon as you say food deserts, you think it puts a color on it. You think of the black and
Mm-hmm.
brown people who only access to food is at the gas station, okay, and all them computer stores, the
Mm-hmm.
KFC, McDonald's, all that are around there. That's where the food comes from. Food, but
Mm-hmm.
so I like to think of us creating food abundance in those neighborhoods.
Right.
We have to create food abundance because the truth of the matter is, here in Atlanta, Sally Ann has to take a bus and maybe a train to go get some quality food with
Mm-hmm.
her children in tow, carrying them bags home. Where the white folks up on the north side can jump in their Mercedes or Lexus and drive. They both have to go to get food.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But if you're able to drive down there because you got a college education and some money in your pocket versus a sister down in the hood who's on welfare and doesn't have any money, that it's an economic problem that we're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with. Okay. And it's reinforced by the redlining that they do in our neighborhoods, the non-foods. I got close relations up there in Detroit. Every major grocery store shut down in Detroit. They don't have
Really?
any. There are none. I don't know what are the big stores that you have in Chicago?
Grocery stores?
Yes, ma'am. What are the
Well,
chains?
Whole Food chain is really expanding here.
Yeah, they're doing
We
that
got
everywhere.
Mariano's, Trader
Safeway,
Joe's are kind of a little
those
downgrade from Whole
Whole
Foods,
Foods.
but then
Yeah,
we got still have some jewels, you know.
that's the people I'm talking. Jules,
Yeah,
Safeway, Jan,
Dominic's, moved out of a lot of the black neighborhoods,
in, in
and a
Detroit.
few Jew, but where a lot of black people are getting their groceries from Walmart. Walmart is selling groceries.
It's true.
Menards, not Home Depot, but Menards, which is similar to Home Depot. They're
Man,
selling food.
all
You
that
know,
garbage is in there.
yeah, and
Detroit
like
has none
the
of those.
gas stations. Oh my goodness, that's like your one-stop shop.
There it is.
And
So
they sell liquor. They have enough liquor to blow up the gas station. I think they have more liquor at the gas stations than they do gas.
hello. Well, my the Detroit Black Food Security Network, they're building a co-op
Hmm.
up in Detroit because none of those chains have stores in Detroit. Detroit looks like, since the auto industry has shrunk, the auto industry has gone overseas. Okay, all the Japanese and the Koreans, okay, are building all these cars that are being sold in this country. Detroit is not what it used to be, the auto
No,
manufacturing
no,
capital.
it's not.
So you drive through many of those neighborhoods, look like there's a war zone. Every other house, every third house is burned up, torn down, and those people had no food. So my friend Malik, my brother Malik Yakini, is leading the efforts to build this co-op. He's building building from the ground up, beautiful co-op, with the support from the community. And when he gets that done, then he's going to feel it's time for
And
him
that's
to
what
retire.
co-ops are, like you say, people coming together, supporting. I know when I first started to become a vegan, little co-ops for health food stores, or little small stores, that sold a lot of, vegan, vegetarian products in it. There was a lot of that around, and, some individuals that were purchasing, together from some of the major distributors of certain products. There was a lot of that going on. But then when Whole Foods came to town, that just kind of cut everybody out because they had everything under
Right there.
one roof. And then the price was
Too is high.
it was more reasonable than going into the smaller health food stores.
Oh, I
You
hear
know,
what you're saying. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
But
that's true.
now, they've gone up and up and up and up and up. And like you say, it's expensive to shop, in
Oh, yeah.
that store.
I can do it because it's just
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
me.
I mean, and you can get the organic products, because that's another issue around growing the food is, the pesticides and, Monsanto, the seeds.
Those are all areas. You know, I think we're coming near the end of our talking, but
Sure.
those are all areas uh, that we can go. I'm so happy to have this chance to converse with you, sis. And I hope
Oh,
we're able to share some information and knowledge with your constituents, your audience. Uh, and there's so many other places that we can go. My book, Growing Out Loud, you can get it from my website.
okay, let's show that book again. And we're going to be purchasing some copies of that book because December is coming up and we're enhancing our book giveaway. And we would definitely want to get copies of this book.
You're very welcome. You can get it from Amazon, or if you want me to sign it, get it from my website, thenurigroup.com.
Okay. And we're
Uh,
going to work on you getting some of those books in some of our local bookstores here.
that'd be fine. I'm sorry. There's a major book distributor. I just can't think of it. I'll have to get the name. We can talk later on. I'll give you
Mm-hmm.
where the bookstores know where to go. They know how to buy their books, so they're
Sure.
not going to have any
Sure.
problem. It's the individuals who are sitting here listening to us. I mean, they can go to my website, thenurigroup.com.
Mm-hmm.
Call me, 404-520-8331. My email is Rashid at thenurigroup.com. Nuri, N as in Nancy, URI. They can see my name up. They my
Sure.
yeah, right there. And whatever I can do to help, just let me know.
Wow. Well, you're a great asset. And I'm sure, there are people out there that would appreciate talking to you.
Well,
You've been a great inspiration, and definitely getting your book, I'm sure would be a great inspiration. You said you wrote that book for your children or your grandchildren, right?
oh yeah, yeah. This book, Growing Out Loud, is a polemic. I'm giving you my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's also a tutorial teaching you some things about agriculture and how all these dots are connected, wrapped around an autobiographical theme.
Okay.
Um, so the book I'm working on now is going to have not going to have the autobiography in there. It's just going to be
Okay. Oh,
about
so you're working on another book.
yeah,
Okay.
by God's grace. Yeah, I need to
Okay.
get me an intern to help me with this next
Okay. Wow. Well, Nuri,
one.
Brother Rashid Nuri, I thank you so much for coming. This has been a very enlightening conversation, giving people another perspective, to a deeper perspective to look at in terms of another angle that we need to deal with, a very important angle in developing, enhancing our communities. And
Yes, ma'am.
that's addressing the land and our food source, as you say, which is connected to everything.
Yes, ma'am. Sure is.
Connected to everything. So
Well,
I
thank
did
you.
promise again before the end of the show that I would announce our winner of our book giveaway, Christopher Scott. You have won. Congratulations. The 4-pack series by Robert Greene on the 48 Laws of Power, Art of Seduction, Concise Laws of Human Nature, and Concise Laws of Mastery. That is 4 separate books written by Robert Greene, who is known for telling on these corporations and helping us understand how they operate. So you will be receiving a call from us, and you will receive this gift. And again, please go to rrgbc.org, where you can donate to our organization. You can purchase from our store. And this podcast, along with all other podcasts, will be archived on our website for your viewing at any time. And so please remember, support Black businesses.
That's
And
right.
so thank you again, Rashid, for coming.
Thank you for having me. Peace be unto you.
All right. Peace be unto you.
That's a break.